Exactly right. There's your picture of the market right now. Dow trying to accelerate a little bit. Good for 285. S&P is up a little more than 0.75%. That's a gain of 33 points, retaking 4,200. Been a key level. NASDAQ up 0.5%, 279 is a yield on the 10. All right, Jim. So Alphabet, Microsoft out of the way. And we'll talk about those in a second. But just give me your feeling on the market right now. As I said, Dow's up 300. Does it feel like we're about to take off into something?
Well, my friend Larry Williams, who's one of the great historians of this market, saying that this is the wave. It starts here, goes back up. He said that I did it a month ago, so it's got that going for it. Against that, did some work with Carly Garner, one of my famous technicians, last night. You know, the NASDAQ 100 rallied 7,000 points from the bottom in 2009 to 2020. So it took that loss a long time, right? This time it covered 10,000 points in just 2 years. And I think a lot of this NASDAQ 100, this is full attack. And I think there's a feeling you don't necessarily get a speeding ticket if you're the market. But there is a feeling that we haven't given up all that we could still give up in terms of the NASDAQ. And the money does seem to be going towards some more traditional companies.
See, so I was going to say, do we breathe a sigh of relief because of what Microsoft delivered, or are we still walking on eggshells ahead of Apple? Because, if that's a disappointment, and you say it's not cut and dry that it's going to be a home run.
No, it's not.
You say the odds are rising that it might not be. What did you say, 30, 40% or something like that on Twitter?
Yes. China is a real question mark. People are not buying. We learned that. They're not getting an Amazon package with the 13 Pro. But then again, Mike Sievert this morning, CEO of T-Mobile, said, look, it's still the best way to get customers. But then again, we have Europe weakening. We learned that from Ruth Porat last night. By the way, I like the Alphabet quarter because it was really just one part that was bad. I've been looking at Google Cloud to be good and search being good. But I come back and say that Netflix was this ruinous moment. It was the crevasse that was too much for this market.
I'll tell you what, Bryn, what jumped out to me in your note today, and I want you to expand on it. You say that the FANG generals are being taken out one by one. FANG is an acronym, and this is going to be, this is going to hit.
No, I said it's over too. I said it's fine.
FANG as an acronym is dead. Expand, please.
Well, I think it was a clever acronym that I think someone at Goldman created or whoever. But I think
Facebook. Jim Cramer did. The man right to my left
I'm putting it to rest, Bryn. That's why
I said it the way I did.
So as Jim likes to say, there's always a bull market somewhere. I just don't think that bull market's going to be in that acronym. And so I think, Facebook is a general that got taken down. And I think it got taken down because of Apple's privacy, which I think is wonderful overall, but not wonderful for Facebook shareholders. Netflix got taken out, for their own idiosyncratic reasons. And so I think what you have left with is Google, Apple, and Microsoft. And I think as Microsoft showed us yesterday, they continue to deliver on Azure, on LinkedIn, even on games, which had huge year over year, I think, hurdles because of how much growth they saw. And what's nice today is, at least for the time being, is to see the market recognize good numbers and actually have Microsoft trade up. And so I think that, over the next few years, that there's going to be a new group of names. And I do think you're going to have some older school names that do better than the traditional FANG names that Jim appropriately named so well.
Let's go to the next.
It's very fine, but it is dead. Thanks, Nick.
Let's go to the next investment committee member. I'm calling Joey negative. That's Joe Terranova, because he says don't believe the hype. Those are my words, not his. But he is short the NASDAQ and S&P futures. So that's a new move for you, Joe, and expresses point of view on where this market may be heading.
Yeah, well, do you realize how long I actually am in my portfolio of equity names? I'm fully invested. So we had a dramatic reversal on Friday. We had a recovery attempt on Monday. We failed. On Friday, I sold some S&P futures. On the failure on Monday, Tuesday morning, I sold some NASDAQ futures. You have to do that to protect against risk. I like what we're hearing from earnings. I'm not getting out of Microsoft. I'm not getting out of Alphabet or Amazon or Apple. I'm holding on to these names, and I'm holding on to everything that I have in my portfolio. I think those are the names that are going to have the V-shaped recovery. But let me ask you something, Scott. The dollar's at a 5-year high. What's the message there? What's the message to the Federal Reserve in earnings? You know what? Jim knows this. The economy is on fire, and the Federal Reserve is way behind. And until the Federal Reserve catches up, the market is going to walk on eggshells.
Well, I just feel like, Jim, that the dollar is, in some respects, on fire versus, let's say, the euro, which is at a 5-year. The euro is at a 5-year low versus the dollar. That says that there's real concern about Europe weakening. Joe says our economy's on fire. That's an interesting way to put it, and I'm not 100% certain you would agree with that.
I think that if you go into D.R. Horton, called the largest home builder, you can tell that everyone's just waiting for that moment. The housing's good, but it's mostly because people locked in their mortgage. The mortgage rates are just incredibly high now versus where they were 2 years ago. And that will hurt housing. Even D.R. Horton's going to tell you that, only because rents are so high. The numbers haven't fallen apart. I know Mary Barr was talking about doing a lot of EVs, but on the call, all the questions were about demand destruction and isn't it over? There's too many things that could just be pushed right over because it's all like copper could be, rice could be. And when I come back and I say the whole complex, with the exception of oil because of geopolitical concerns, the whole complex could come down. Why? Because we're going to tick down.
See, so Joe, I mean, how do you respond to that, right? And if you know, Jim Lebenthal was sitting here, he would be telling us how great the economy is, how great this is. Look at the airlines, they're all full, the hotels are full. Does that tell the real story, though, Joe? I don't know if the economy is actually as on fire as you suggest.
I think the economy's on fire, and it's on fire in a bad way. It's on fire in a way that we need the water to cool it down. I think that's the problem. People are not having any regard what they're paying for a hotel room or a flight or the price of a tank of gas. Jim talked about real estate, residential real estate. Scott, you and I have spoken privately about this. I've been waiting for the last 6 months for residential real estate to correct. When's it going to correct? I understand there's limited supply, but the price right now in a lot of urban cities when?
It's going to correct when the Fed starts unloading the mortgage-backed securities it was buying, and that may be the thing that tips the housing market into a place that you're trying to talk about.
Yeah, but that's why D.R. Horton sells it 4 times earnings. We all expect it. The analysts expect it. It's going to happen. It's going to turn out, Joe. That's going to turn out to be 20 times earnings.
But Jim, that's the stock market. Jim, that's the stock market.
I'm not trading
the economy
houses.
and the stock market are two different things. The economy and the stock market are two totally different things right now. I'm talking about the economy. The economy. The economy is where the disregard for pricing is currently in play, and that speculative fever has to be tempered, and the Federal Reserve is not aggressive enough in doing that.
Well, I agree. I want Bullard. Bullard's my guy.
Yeah.
75. No, 70. I want 75.
I know you want 75.
I want 75, 75, 50.
But what happens if you got 50 and then an intermediate move between the two?
Perfect.
That would accomplish what you want.
The market goes up. Dejarian, does the market go up on heavy on two raises? I got to hear from you, man.
Sure.
Come on, Pete.
Yeah. Good to see you, Jim. Good to hear you as well.
I keep thinking,
yes,
look, it's Thursday's the draft. I look at you. I still want to take you first round.
Hey, I appreciate that, Jim. I think you guys should.
You have to trade up to get Pete.
You know what Jim's going to have to do? Your Eagles are going to have to package that 15th and 18th pick, get Deebo Samuel, and then you've got yourself a receiver, and you guys are going to be doing really, really well this coming year. That's what you need
I know
to
that we're thinking about a wide receiver, but yeah, I hear you. But look,
Pete,
you and I both know this
Live.
market's anticipating some. Look, Joe's right. But Pete, when did the market actually like it? Last night, Jack Hartung on the Chipotle call, he's the CFO. He said, "Look, this is the worst inflation I've ever seen." Now you say food can't be controlled by the Fed. Everything can be controlled by the Fed because we'll stop going out.
Pete,
that's true. That's true. That is true. I mean, you know what? And sometimes I get a little caught up also, Jim, and I know you know this as well. But everybody says that all these airplanes are completely packed. They were packed, but I think you're starting to see people say, you know what, these are costing too much. You're going to see a little bit less. And oh, by the way, they cut back on the number of flights. So let's not forget about that. I mean, that's something that everybody seems to be completely lost about is, hey, look, when there used to be 10 flights from New York to Minneapolis, now there's 5, now there's 6, whatever it is. So some of these numbers, they look great, but I really do wonder. And when you've got those prices, yes, people will go down to Disney. They want to go there or wherever they're going to go. They want to take a flight. But how many will come after that? Will they continue to pay those absorbent amounts of money to do that? The answer is no. They'll pull back, just like you're talking about, Jim.
Yeah.
Walk us up then to what is the next pressure point. And I say that as like Facebook and Meta reporting after the bell.
Mark Zuckerberg is working on the Omniverse. I'd like him to work on Instagram because his TikTok is so powerful. Look,
he needs to stay in this universe with his stock price, which is down 53.5% from the 52-week high.
Yeah,
right? Forget the
I think there's
metaverse.
more of he needs to get a little more in touch with like what's happening in the real world here. Look, what would be to me is that initially there are people who say, I got to get out of Nucor, I got to get out of Freeport, I got to get out of DR, I got to get out of anything that I'm in that has any economic sensitivity. And I would tell you that that's when you would have to buy some of it because those stocks can correct and then they represent value. Look, there's just so many stocks that got created, and I say stocks, not companies, that got created that have to get wiped out. And that's what has to happen. I mean, look, I'm not going to pick on any single company, but I mean, any company that allowed me to rent a suit while I went on a plane that flew over traffic and then took me to Philadelphia so that I could have some suite. Nothing. Those have to go.
Pete, you own Facebook. How concerned are you, given what they delivered last quarter was like a pile of rocks? So what happens now?
It was a pile of something. I mean, it was absolutely awful. Everything that
tried to be
Zuckerberg
kind
did,
on
they
television, Pete.
I know, me too. I kept it clean. But no, the reality is this. He took his eye off the ball, and that was the biggest frustration I think all of us had with Facebook because he concentrated on the Meta. The problem with that, it wouldn't have been a problem had he given us that they were absolutely focused, dead focused still on Instagram and Facebook and all of the other parts of what Facebook really is still. Now, they're working on the metaverse. It's okay that they take $10 billion and throw it at the metaverse. I'm okay with that. They still have incredible cash flow. They still come away at the end of it with all their spend with about $30 billion in free cash flow that's still sitting there. So I'm not so worried about that. What I was worried about last quarter was they took their eye off the ball. If they are continuing to watch the ball now, and they're able to do that with Instagram and with Facebook and all the different entities that they've got, then I think we can see a little bit of growth still happening. Not the biggest problem with Netflix was what? They didn't keep up with their subs. They took their eye off the ball. That's exactly what's happening, I think, last quarter with Facebook. They better not do it this quarter because this is very, very painful. That being said, I am positioned by having puts to the downside, selling upside calls, and giving myself a little bit of room because of the way the options are trading. And by the way, the premiums are outrageous. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to pull the trigger and sell an upside call against a very long-term hold that I've had in Facebook.
Right, so, 4 o'clock, we're gonna get that. And then tomorrow is the big day. And in all seriousness, I mean, what do you think is really riding? What are the stakes for this Apple report tomorrow for the overall market?
I think they're big. I think that we got to get this advanced decline line better because so many stocks are still going down. But, come back to that idea that we covered 10,000 points in 2 years. If we just use the usual trend line, well, we would be not at 13,000, we'd be at 8,000. So I think that there could be still one more rollover. Where there's not a big rollover, by the way, with the exception of Boeing, is when you look at the actual Dow. You got 3M, not good. You got Boeing, absolutely horrible. But you know what? This is a group of very good companies. Express had a great quarter. Verizon was probably the worst of these. I'm waiting for Disney to make a turn. But, this is the group. They've got 30 stocks that I like, of which very few are NASDAQ. And that's what I'm saying is we're going to revert to.
Companies that make things and do stuff, right? Are we back to that?
And return some of the capital to the shareholders.
So let's go where you were going to take us a moment ago, and that's this Boeing horror show. I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? Last I checked, the stock was down 10%.
Right. Well,
maybe it's come off that. Let's throw up shares of BA if we can.
I am throwing up shares.
You said, and I'm going to read some of your quotes, Jim. Here's Boeing. It's come off the lows, but it's still an ugly day. It's on the verge of being a third-rate, pitiful, helpless giant. What the heck was I thinking holding on to this?
Well, I sold 2/3 of it. I kept the third. I did a little piece for my morning meeting about lessons learned. Get rid of the tag ends. But what concerns me about Boeing is, and we just heard Pete talk about it, this may be some of the worst execution I've ever seen. I mean, there's always something. Remember that Rosanna Dana? There's always something. Today, when you speak to Calhoun, what was the problem? Well, it turns out that the Air Force One was the problem. Air Force One? I mean, Air Force One? I mean, wasn't that Trump? I mean, there's always a problem. How about, like, China? They sent one plane over there. It's like China. It's like, oh, they don't need planes necessarily.
I mean, you're saying that Calhoun is going on the wall of shame? I mean, it's early in the year, but it sounds like you're describing that.
His career. Wow.
I mean, but that's what you basically described. You said it's such horrible execution.
Wheels of justice are turning quickly.
Well, you know what? I wanted to hear, when I saw the Boeing quarter and I saw your comments, I really wanted to hear from Jim Lebenthal for obvious reasons, because he has been a huge supporter of this stock. He has defended it at every step of the way. Said, don't worry, China.
Could we get him on the phone right now?
He said China's going to recertify the MAX. He's going to get it back in the air. That's the big thing. That's what I'm waiting for. That's why I continue to hold on to the stock. Well, Farmer Jim, what do you think now?
Well, I heard you guys talking about Facebook as delivering a pile of rocks, and I'm not going to qualify this as a pile of rocks because I don't want to be insulting to rocks. This is a terrible report. This is a terrible report, and, however much egg I can fit on my face, I've got to have on my face.
You got like a Western omelet all over you right now.
Hold the cheese.
Yeah, I happen to be in Denver, Colorado, so maybe that makes it feel a little bit better, but it doesn't. Look, this is, Jimmy was saying it, okay? This is management. This is just frankly, the worst execution I've ever seen in my life. Wow. This is worse than Intel. All right, this is worse than anything I've seen.
Okay, but I want you to tell us then.
What I don't understand.
I want you to tell us then what you're doing with the stock, right? That's what it matters most to me and our viewers. You can, say it was the worst, this, that, and the other thing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. What are you doing with the shares?
Okay. I'm staying with it, and here is why. It's really simple. If you look at those airline reports, the airlines are going gangbusters, and this is before international travel has really come back, which it's showing signs of. The bottom line is this. Planes are needed. All right, the 737 MAX is shipping. The 787 is a problem, and I'm going to be blunt. Calhoun has to go. I mean, there's no, and Jimmy, I think I listened to you this morning, and I think you said something like he needs a W. He's done. This is an F. This is an F minus.
You're pulling him. You're pulling him.
Yeah, there's no more runway left. And the board is culpable here. I don't understand why they're waiting. I mean, what more do you need? Calhoun's head on a platter would, frankly, probably satisfy the FAA and get the 787 delivered again. 737 MAX in China should happen. I mean, that plane crash a month ago set things back, but it's looking very clear that wasn't Boeing's fault. They did ship one plane, as Jimmy pointed out. There should be more going soon. But the bottom line is this. You need planes. And there's only two manufacturers, and Airbus is sold out. That's why I'm sticking with it. I've got to put the emotion aside, and I've got to make the intellectual decision. I'm staying with it.
But you still want to put his head on a platter. I mean, bring me the head of Fredo Garcia. It's a special moment.
I mean,
you know what, Jim? You're right. Farmer Jim's right. I mean, this may be a
stock.
This may be a wall of shame situation.
But I mean, but about the stock though, if you can tell me, 1,000 reasons why this was a horrible quarter, why he's not an executor, but you're going to tell me you're going to stay with the stock because they have a duopoly. So what?
There's McDonald's and Burger King and nobody else. What are you going to do? You're going to go to one of them.
I know, but Facebook essentially has a duopoly. That stock was down 53%. Doesn't mean anything.
Well, you can't pull Zucker. I mean, he's got to get back in. I mean, no, Facebook built a great business. Calhoun is part of the downfall of a great business. Like my kid, you guys. Hey, Farmer Jim, you remember like the documentary about Boeing? I mean,
yeah,
it's like. Anyone involved with Boeing should have been let go after that documentary. Anyone.
Wow. We got to bounce, Jimmy.
He's got me fired up.
I know he's got you fired up. I know.
That was good. Does Bryn think he should?
Well, you fired everybody up, and then Jim was all fired up because you were fired up. Well, now, believe me, after listening to this, Calhoun's probably fired up. Based on what you guys said.
He compared it to Intel. Oh, my God. You're talking about benchmark of pain.
Well, I mean, if Calhoun was making like $170 million this year, it would be compared to Intel.
I think that's right. You're talking about Ben Simmons territory.
All right, let's do this. Let's take a break. We have some big moves that Jim Cramer's charitable trust has been making lately. We're going to go through all of them for you. We're going to get you ready for Ford. Jim loves Ford, I think. He likes Farley, right?
Yes!
PayPal, Qualcomm, all coming down the pike. Halftime's back in 2.